Salve cantanti, and welcome back. This is our inaugural video of the Repertoire series, starting with none other than Mozart's Le Nozze di Figaro. Now, the idea behind this series and the Repertoire series in general is very simple. You cannot sing what you do not feel, you cannot feel what you do not understand. Now, each volume works through a specific piece, a specific masterpiece, and through it, I guide you with pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary notes, as well as a proper translation of the text and some performance considerations and how to interpret the text. So if you're interested in getting the full volume and the course that is attached to it as well, check my link now below. But that's for later, because if we have no clue what the actual story is, it doesn't help very much, even if we know how to pronounce everything correctly, or we can interpret the text well. So let us begin with a bit of context, historical context, and let's talk about the story itself. Okay, so the opera is called Le Nozze di Figaro. Now, Mozart composed the music for this, and Lorenzo da Ponte was the librettist. Da Ponte and Mozart worked together to produce several incredible masterpieces. Don Giovanni, Le Nozze di Figaro, and if I'm not mistaken, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, Così fan tutte. Regardless, Da Ponte's writing is exceptional, and of course, so is Mozart. So it was a fantastic combination. Now, Le Nozze di Figaro is essentially the sequel to an earlier, or rather, Le Nozze di Figaro is based on a play by the French playwright Beaumarchais, and the original play this is based on is La Folle Journée, the Crazy Day, or Le Mariage de Figaro, the Marriage of Figaro, Le Nozze di Figaro. And that's the sequel to the original, The Barber of Seville. The same Barber of Seville, Paisiello wrote an opera on, as well as Rossini. And this is essentially the sequel. Now, the main ideas which we encounter, the themes in this opera are, there's a lot of, in fact, let's write a little bit. So we have a lot of deception. We have a lot of power or class conflict. And at the same time, we have a lot of irony. There are many other themes in this piece as well. Perhaps it is worth writing down lust as well, and desire. Lust and desire. So the main plot, the main story is basically, it revolves around the following. So forget about the Conte Almaviva that you knew in The Barber of Seville, who is a wonderful, gallant tenor. No, ciao, no more. He is no longer that sweet person who essentially saved and freed Rosina from Bartolo. Here, the Conte has turned into a baritone, first of all, which you could say that there's a little bit of a time travel here, because Rossini wrote the first, essentially, part of this opera. The duo. So Barbiere, Nozze. But Rossini came after Mozart. In any case, the Count here is presented as a very different man. He is jealous. He is power-crazed. He's turned into, well, unfortunately, someone who only thinks, has a lot, is consumed by desire and lust. And that, unfortunately, leads him to be unfaithful. His wife, La Contessa, who is Rosina, knows essentially that the Count is not being faithful or loyal to her. At the same time, Figaro and Susanna are two of the main characters here. They're about to get married. But the Count has his eyes on Susanna, and he wants to essentially reinstate a right that he had abolished, the so-called droit du seigneur, or in Latin I think it's prime noctem, it doesn't matter. What does this mean? On the first night of one of your servants, rather, let me rephrase, this phrase was strange. So, if I'm the Count, and Susanna is one of my servants, who she is, she belongs to my, she's part of my household. When on the first night, or rather on the night of her wedding, I am allowed to have sex with her. And that is why it is called le droit, the right of du seigneur, of the sire, of the Lord's right. Essentially, he gets to enjoy Susanna on his wedding night. Now, Susanna has understood that this is what is going on, and Figaro finds out. She tells him, and he becomes absolutely furious, justifiably so. And essentially, the plot moves on to attempt to trick the Count into meeting Susanna at night, but in reality, he's not going to be meeting Susanna, but he's going to be meeting Cherubino, one of the valets. Sorry, not valets, one of the pages at the who belong to, essentially, who are part of the Count's household. Cherubino, parenthesis, Cherubino as well suffers from essentially the same lust that the Count has, which is quite interesting. But he's young, he's 15, 14, he's a teenager. In any case, the main plan is this: we want to expose the Count in order to essentially show him that, leave Susanna alone and stop being unfaithful to your wife. We then have lots of dramatic events. There's a lot of confusion. At some point, Figaro discovers that the two people he absolutely despises in the household, who want to essentially force him to marry one of the two, so Marcellina and Bartolo, scheme to make Figaro marry Marcellina because Marcellina gave Figaro money that Figaro never returned. So at some point it's either pay up or marry her. But during that moment of absolute confusion, they discover that, Figaro is Marcellina and Bartolo's child, long-lost son, and that they're relatives. So Marcellina is his mother, and Bartolo is his father. An incredible plot twist, and it's also quite funny. Then, the Countess and Susanna take Figaro's initial plan in their own hands, and instead of sending off Cherubino and have him meet the Count dressed as a girl in the garden at night, they say, no. The Contessa says, Susanna, you will go. Or rather, you will go. But who is that you? I shall go dressed as you, using your clothes. And that is essentially what happens. There's quite a few comic, funny. They are funny misunderstandings. And at the very end, the Count is ridiculed, even though he thinks that he has caught Figaro. And so he goes to meet Susanna, and then he also sees the Contessa with Figaro. But who is this Contessa? It's Susanna, dressed as the Countess. And so he discovers them together, and he's absolutely furious. He wants to kill Figaro. And then the Contessa, the real Contessa, appears and basically says, see what you've done. She doesn't say that, but that's the point. At the very end, Contessa, perdono. Countess, please forgive me. Yes, okay, fine. And everyone says, Joe, let's put an end to this crazy day. Questo giorno di follia. La folle journée. Beaumarchais speaks of. So that is the plot, essentially. I gave you a very 3,000-foot view of the plot because there's quite a few little side stories, if you will, inside in which happen in the play. They're quite fun, but this is the bird's eye view of everything. Now, this was a little bit of an introduction, and of course, you should just read the play and listen to it. And of course, if you're studying it, you will learn the plot much more easily. But in any case, this was it for our little introductory video. There will be many more videos in this series, so stay tuned. If you want to work with the material directly, in depth, focusing on meaning and impeccable pronunciation, as well as fully understanding what you say, then you can check out my website. I will have a link down below, and you can have a look at the first volume of the Repertoire series, which is Le Nozze di Figaro, as we said. And essentially the course, there's two components to this. There's the PDF, the actual volume, and online course material, which you can listen to and use during your studying. So if you're interested, check the link down below, and I'll be seeing you next time.